CLAREC and CEDiR into the seminar. We want to let you know that following CLAREC's principle of democratizing the reflections and knowledge developed within CLAREC, our seminars are recorded and later shared in our social media. For those who haven't joined us before, let me briefly introduce the research group and the collective that came together to organize today's session. CEDiR stands for the Cambridge Educational Dialogue Research Group. The Faculty of Education has a history of world-leading research on educational dialogue, and CEDiR's aim is to consolidate and extend its research, reaching across disciplines and contexts to develop the potential of educational dialogue at all education levels and to have an impact on theory, policy, and practice. CLAREC stands for the Cambridge Latin American Research and Education Collective, and its founding members are PhD students at the Faculty of Education at the University of Cambridge. CLAREC aims to constitute a space for Latin American perspectives that brings together researchers working on Latin American contexts and all those interested in hearing more about it. It aims to make visible the region's knowledge production and current debates linked to education research towards the diversification and decolonization of academia. Today, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Linda Hargreaves and Maria Veites Casado as our speakers. Linda Hargreaves retired as reader in classroom learning and pedagogy from the University of Cambridge in 2014. She began her professional career in primary teaching, moving on to lectureships at Leicester, Durham, and Cambridge universities. Her research includes ESRC and government-funded projects in classroom interaction, educational provision in small and rural schools, and the status of teachers. In 2012, she was introduced to the Pan-European INCLUD-ED project and to Flecha's theory of dialogic learning, both of which our speakers would talk about in our presentation today. Linda has enjoyed continued association with Maria Veites in the implementation of successful educational actions, such as Dialogic Literary Gatherings in East Anglia. Maria Veites is a teacher, educational psychologist, and master in politics and democracy. She worked for the Spanish Ministry of Education as advisor to the Secretary of State for Education, and during that time, she was a member of the State School Council, the Higher Council for Artistic Education, and the Forum for Inclusive Education. She was manager for Latin America of the Natura Institute in Brazil. Her main task was to extend the learning communities project in the education systems of 7 countries: Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Argentina, and Chile. Currently, from the CREA research group at the University of Barcelona, she coordinates European projects aimed at expanding and consolidating the European school network of learning communities. This network involves schools, governments, and universities in Cyprus, Italy, Malta, Czech Republic, Portugal, Spain, and also the United Kingdom, where it was originated thanks to the collaboration with Linda Hargreaves. Thank you very much to both of you for sharing your work on Dialogic Literary Gatherings with us today. Before giving the floor to our speakers, let me just invite our attendees to please write your questions in the general chat or raise your hand when Linda Hargreaves and Maria ask you to. There would be 2 moments to ask questions, so they will tell you when that moment would be. And yes, and if you need anything, just put it in the chat, and Rocio, Alex, and me will be looking at it. Okay, so Linda and Maria, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. And I would like to reiterate, thank you very much for people for joining in. I do hope we can reward your interest, and it's lovely to see so many people. This is quite exciting. Yes, as Anna said, we're speaking on behalf of the CEDiR group and the Psychology, Education and Learning Studies group here in the faculty, and we're especially grateful to CLAREC, the Cambridge Latin American Research in Education Collective, and particularly Anna and Rocio. We had hoped that Rocio Garcia Carrion would be with us in this presentation, and many of you will know Rocio. But unfortunately, or fortunately, she was rather busy bringing a brand new life into the world about a week and a half ago. So we send a felicitation to Rocio Berna and baby Alaya. Now,
we are going to share now our presentation. I hope you are all seeing it well.
Okay, a quick overview. We plan 4 parts to our session, beginning with some background and history and information about dialogic gatherings, which are the main focus of the session. We'll move on to have a look, I have to say, a cook's tour of Freirean theory in the conceptualization of dialogic gatherings, and then go on to have a look at some examples, both here in England, I have to say, and in Latin America, thanks to Maria's experience. And then the fun part comes in the last part, when we get to experience a dialogic gathering, when we're going to read and discuss Freire's second letter to those who dare teach. And we trust that the reading has been made available. But we shall leave 10 minutes or so at the time for people to have a look again at the reading and choose their selected piece. So without more ado, I think over to Maria.
Thank you, Linda, and welcome. It's really a pleasure to share some time with you this afternoon and to see so many familiar faces and others that we are really pleased to meet. We are going to start our presentation with the origins. The origins of the dialogic gatherings. Dialogic gatherings start in late 70s within a framework of a big dream in the neighborhood called La Verneda San Martin. You can see it there in the bottom left, at the outskirts of the city of Barcelona in Spain, a very poor neighborhood and excluded part of the city, as you can see. Ramón Flecha, founder of the Dialogic Gatherings and the project Schools and Learning Communities, promote with other adult educators this neighborhood dream, inspired among others by Paulo Freire's work, of whom he was also a very good and close friend. This grassroots movement, which managed to achieve the opening of an adult school, that you can see how it looks nowadays here in the top right, was the catalyst of transformation and improvement of the area, and it was the first Spanish experience to be published in the Harvard Review of Education. You can see it there, La Verneda San Martin, a school where people dare to dream. It was an ambitious dream, a very participative one in areas such as urban planning, habitability, health. But in education, they dreamt that the best works of universal literature, the best knowledge, the best culture will be available to everyone. And all of this from the Freirean firm belief that through awareness, knowledge, and dialogue, we can transform and improve our reality. Later on, these dialogic gatherings, they were identified as a successful educational actions by the research called INCLUD-ED, financed by the 6th framework program of the European Commission, where you can see there all these 14 different partners over 5 years that were researching what actions improve the inclusion and social cohesion in Europe from education. INCLUD-ED was coordinated by our research group, the Community of Research of Excellence for All, CLAREC, at the University at Barcelona. And as you can see, they were identified 6 successful educational actions. Today, we are going to focus just in the dialogic gatherings, but you have others there, and that book that you have in the top right, Successful Educational Actions for Inclusion, you Google it and it's open source in internet. So if you want to have more information about the other actions. All these successful educational actions, like the dialogic gathering, promote interactions and promote family and community participation as 2 key factors for learning and development in today's society. This is the consensus of the scientific community. When we talk about successful educational actions, we refer to actions that has been having a strong social impact, meaning improvements, as you can see in the slide, improvements in achievement, improvement in values, in social cohesion, in relationships. And those improvements have been sustained over the time, has been transferable, and they are published in scientific magazines. That's what we call successful educational actions, as we are going to talk today. These dialogic gatherings and these successful educational actions, we say that they have a strong scientific impact, as they were published more than 300 articles, books, chapters, and also confirmed by further research after INCLUD-ED. A strong political impact. Yesterday I've been in Portugal, where the Ministry of Education is supporting these actions in more than 150 schools. Later on, we are going to talk about other governments in Latin America that are also doing that, but there is more than 50 governments, local, regional, and national. And you see as well the recommendations and communications from the European Commission about this to transform schools in learning communities. And they have a strong social impact as well. You can see that school in Hospitalet, close as well to Barcelona, where 95% of the students are in UK terms pupil premium. They have support at the school, and they are having much better results in the language that they are studying, Catalan, Spanish, English, as you can see, thanks to the Dialogic Gathering, having better results than the schools in the area, even the elite schools. And also, these impacts of the Dialogic Gatherings and other successful actions are published in magazines like the Cambridge Journal of Education, improving these language skills, improving enrollment, absenteeism. I encourage you also to consult that special issue in Qualitative Inquiry, where you can find 16 articles about how Dialogic Gathering transform lives. But Linda is going to talk afterwards about that, so I'm going to briefly explain how it works. The Dialogic Gatherings are a collective construction of meaning, and we debate and discuss best works of culture and scientific knowledge accumulated by humanity over time. In these sessions, the attention is not the author, the area, or the technique. That's for other classes or the moments inside the curriculum, but in the Dialogic Gathering, mainly we focus in the interpretations, thoughts, feelings, and reflections that the artwork creates in participants. For that, we choose first a piece to discuss, and we use best universal works. Maybe later on in the debate, we can discuss why we only work with classics and with best universal works. But mainly these pieces brings deep questions. They are cross-cultural, they pass the test of time. There is a consensus of the quality of these pieces. They help to bridge the cultural gap in some communities. Those are some of the reasons. So we choose a piece to read or a piece of art or a music piece, and we make it available to all participants in advance. Participants commit to read those pages or one chapter of the piece, or they listen the music, and they have to choose something that they would like to share in the Dialogic Gathering. That is what we are going to do at the end of this session. And they have to think not only what they want to share, but also what are the reasons for the choice. So because they make them think something, they feel something, or make them reflect, bring back memories of previous experiences, and so on. So the day of the gathering, sitting in a perfect circle, the moderator just start asking who would like to share idea or paragraph. Participants raise hands, and then the moderator gives the floor to the first participant that share their idea and the reasons for why he or she chose the selected aspect. When the first person explains why they chose that idea and their reasons, we open a round of comments where participants can raise their hands as well to build up in that idea, agreeing, disagreeing, complementing. And then the moderator is responsible for facilitating the discussion and ensuring this egalitarian dialogue and other principles that Linda is going to explain following. We will wanting to share with you a very short video so you can have a taste of what it is the feeling of dialogic gathering. The first part is a school in Rio de Janeiro, one of the first schools that start this implementation in a very the private context in favela. And when we arrived there, saying that these children are going to read the classics and they are going to discuss it, they couldn't believe that they could access to Homer or Shakespeare. And they were saying that they were so far apart from them. And yeah, you can see here in the video a little bit of those connections that these children were making. And then there is images of some schools from the UK that they will be sharing as well afterwards. It's just 2 minutes.
Já sei o que dizer. Romeu foi exilado e aposta o mundo todo contra nada, que ele nunca terá a coragem de voltar para reclamar você. Ou então, se voltar, tudo terá que acontecer às escondidas. Bom, eu gostei muito disso, porque fala como se fosse dia de hoje, né? Porque agora tudo acontece às escondidas, que a mãe não deixa namorar, aí a pessoa começa a namorar escondido da mãe. Por isso que eu gostei, foi a paz, eu me senti muito, que isso acontece no dia de hoje, entendeu?
Página 93, segundo parágrafo, as velas noturnas. As velas noturnas estão se apagando, e o dia brincalhão se aproximando, nas pontas dos pés. Por cima do topo das montanhas, cobertas de neblinas, minha opção é partir e viver ou ficar e morrer. Então, eu acho que esse trecho, ele identifica as pessoas que estão com medo de decidir uma coisa que já deveria ter decidido há muito tempo.
The real success stories are the ones in my class who weren't avid readers, and actually we've really struggled to get them to read and to get them to engage in literature.
I found myself sort of like struggling with reading, getting annoyed at myself, and like now I've like really overcome my like fear of reading and all that, and like I'm actually like really like starting to improve and getting better at reading. Like, I'm reading like harder books that I'd never like imagined me reading like 1 year ago.
Because you know when you read a book, you just read in your head. Most people do, but when you do DLG, you can talk about it like to lots of people and like say your opinion.
We will have also time later to discuss. And now I hand it over to Linda.
Thank you. I have seen those videos before, and I'm always astonished. Just personal comment there. Yes, it falls to me to attempt to present something on Freirean theory in the conceptualization of dialogic gatherings, which seemed to me from the minute I learned about them to embody much Freire's theory of dialogic action. But having said that, we don't have enough time for me to present the whole theory on the one hand, and on the other, I think probably many people amongst us are quite familiar with this theory and have probably read the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, in which Freire sets out much of the theory. So we're going to focus today on the educational part as what Freire calls the problem posing or also liberating education, in which acts of cognition and not transferals of information are principal aim. I think another thing that contrasts this approach to education from what most of us are more familiar with, certainly in England, is a learning situation in which the cognizable object, the thing we're going to learn, far from being at the end of the cognitive act, is something that happens in the process of dialogue between teacher and students. And we achieve this through dialogue. I have to say all these are quotations from Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And in particular in this process, the teacher of the students and the students of the teacher cease to exist, and a new term emerges, teacher-student with students-teachers. And together they become jointly responsible for a process in which all grow and all develop. And moving on fairly quickly, this process of dialogue, the essence for Freire is the word itself, which he tells us has two constituent elements or dimensions, reflection and action, which work together in such radical interaction that if one is sacrificed, even a part of it, the other immediately suffers. I feel very conscious that we are very much presenting and delivering at the moment. I'm sure Freire would not be happy with that. But what I do like is this notion of the interaction here between the reflection and action. And as Freire explains in Pedagogy of Hope, I think, he likens it in some ways to Piaget's dynamic equilibrium between assimilation and accommodation in terms of the individual's interaction with the environment, with the world, and with other people. I want to move on now to look at what we're going to focus on, the dialogic gatherings, which were developed, as Maria has said, by Ramón Flecha and in part his great friend Pato Jesus Gomez. And the principle, the first, and to me the overriding principle of dialogic learning is that of the egalitarian dialogue. So again, quoting from Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Freire says, arguments based on authority are no longer valid. In order to function, authority must be on the side of freedom and not against it, which I think we can interpret as shifting the power relationship in the classroom so that we have everyone on a kind of equal footing as far as we can achieve that. Flecha puts it this way: a dialogue is egalitarian when it takes different contributions into consideration according to the validity of their reasoning, instead of according to the positions of power held by the participants. We turn on to the other 6 of these 7 principles, having spoken already about egalitarian dialogue. Here you see a heart with worms coming out of it. I'm going to attach some quotations from Freire to the to the worms. And I hope I can read these, yes. A second important principle, which again you will recognize from Freire's writing, is that of cultural intelligence. And one of the things he says, almost never do they realize that they too know things that they have learned in their relations with the world and with other women and men. I need to say urgently that there are so many times in Pedagogy of the Oppressed that Freire says things that will fit, that fit so well, I should say, preempt really Flecha's principles. So I've chosen these. You could choose many others. If we move on to transformation, it was a real fundamental principle of Freire's theory that through dialogue we should transform our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of the world. One relevant quotation here is that if it is in speaking their word that people, by naming the world, transform it, dialogue imposes itself as a way by which they achieve significance as human beings, a crucial aspect of understanding that you may be being oppressed by a powerful elite. The instrumental dimension, I have always found this quite difficult, as I've explained to Maria, in that what we're going to be talking about, one of the achievements of the Dialogic Gatherings is tremendous gains in children's and students' literacy and indeed numeracy. And this has been demonstrated many times. And in Pedagogy of Hope, Freire points out that he says, for me, it's impossible to understand interpretation of my respect for the local as a rejection of the universal. In this, he's saying he accepts the respect for the local, but the need for universal skills. And in particular, I think one thing to come under criticism is his development of universal minimal vocabulary. But as he says, never have I said that these programs ought to remain absolutely bound up with local reality. So I think that helps to understand the importance of developing many basic skills of literacy and numeracy amongst, and in particular, actually, oracy amongst others. The creation of meaning that the meaning of the text that we're reading is actually created or recreated. As Freire says many, many times, as readers, we must rewrite the text with the author. As he puts it, students, no longer docile listeners, are now critical co-investigators in dialogue with the teacher. Whereas banking education, which I'm sure we're all very familiar, anesthetizes and inhibits creative power, problem-posing education involves a constant unveiling of reality. I find all of these so such powerful statements. And he emphasizes solidarity, the development of mutual trust between all the participants, which is absolutely essential in the partnership of naming the world. And I think Flecha interprets this as all having equal access to many knowledges, but also to the same knowledge. And finally, emphasis on the equality of differences, in which Freire says to us, at the point of encounter in the classroom, there are neither utter ignoramuses nor perfect sages. There are only people who are attempting together to learn more than they now know. Okay, as I said, it is a bit like using the Bible. You can find many quotes that will suit what you want to say, but you can challenge me. Let's move on to what was called the CIPE project, Children's Personal Epistemologies, which was brought to us by Rocío García Carrión back in her research fellowship in 2013 to 15. And when we worked with 6 primary schools in East Anglia, as well as 2 schools in Spain. And tried to look at whether or not dialogic gatherings would work in England. I will say straight away that I was convinced they wouldn't work, that teachers in England would not be able, apologies teachers in England, would not be able to reduce the power imbalance and participate in dialogic gatherings. And I have to say how wrong I was, as we hope to show you. So back in the days when Britain was part of the EU and teachers still used the National Literacy Strategy, which was supposed to be fast-paced and interactive. We can see here that even in the interactive part of a national literacy session or a literacy session, teacher talk is still 75% of the time. Then with the same teacher and the same class doing a dialogic literary gathering, we see that completely inverted. The children here have over 90% of the floor and the teacher less than 10%. This is just one school, and the teacher here developed this a long way so that in her class, actually a child could take over as moderator. But in the other classrooms, we consistently had results of the children having 80% of the talk. I've never seen anything like it. I've been observing classrooms for 30 years, and this astounded me. I better move on more quickly. And this graph, which Rothio produced using some hidden facility within NVivo, shows us that whereas typically even in an interactive class, you may get only half a dozen children dominating the talk. In this, you can see, I can't point it out, but 20 of the 26 children made some kind of contribution here, while the teacher's contribution was very patchy, mainly simply saying, would anyone like to add anything? Or we'll turn to so-and-so's contribution now. I have to say also that over time, when we took similar analysis of the same classes, the children's utterances became longer. And children who didn't speak in the beginning, after several weeks of one dialogic gathering a week, would begin to speak, which was absolutely wonderful to see. If we move on to our next slide. Yeah, so that research is from 2014. Here are some much more recent studies. And in particular here in lockdown, some children who had quite severe learning difficulties, shall we say, or special needs, who were much more used to having one-to-one support in the classroom, started to have online sessions which involved several people. And in a relatively small group, what was a discovery for the children and the teachers was that the children actually developed some social cohesion. They started to talk to each other, which had not been happening in the regular classroom situation. And the children themselves actually proposed getting together for a lunch after lockdown. In another study, also using communicative methodology, some dialogic scientific gatherings in which ordinary people, grown-ups, but particularly people of, we might say, low socioeconomic status and living in some deprived conditions, started to read scientific articles. Again, challenging work, but they themselves saying, I can understand it better now, I can make better decisions about my health. Some of you will know that I'm a bit of a quantitative researcher as well. And so here's a psychometric study based on factor analysis that we did of a very large group, sample of children in primary schools in Cyprus, England, Italy, and Spain, looking at their attitudes to learning. And what we found was improved attitudes to learning, particularly through DLGs, so attitudes to learning in general, and as well in the interactive groups through social interaction. One more, I think. Yes, Rocio García Carrion moved from Cambridge to the University of Deusto in Bilbao and conducted a quasi-experimental study in which she counterbalanced dialogic gatherings and interactive groups, and interestingly found significantly improved scores on a standard measure of social behaviour in the dialogic literary gatherings, but interestingly, not in the interactive groups. So it leaves a question. And then bringing us bang up to date, in the brand new issue of our own Cambridge Journal of Education, we find a paper of which Maria is one of the authors. And this is some work in Mexico, which demonstrates again very clearly how the children's reading between 2015 and 2018 improved dramatically, so that those who were needing an enormous amount of help, some 56% in 2015, those needing all that amount of help reduced to some 12%, while 55% of them were achieving at the satisfactory and even excellent levels. And if we look also on the national literacy tests for language and communication, we can see here as well that in the case study school, which began with 66% of the children in the failed category, after 3 years of experience, only 29% were in that category, whereas 70% were achieving at least basic, and some of them in the excellent category. So I think this is excellent. However, finally, alas beware, our friend Rocío García-Carrión and her colleagues tell us about Freirean concepts diluted and damaged, and has numerous examples. Here are one or two. Learner-centered approaches where you students can have some say in what you learn, but we teachers will still control the curriculum. The danger of reducing Freire's ideas into a single method or a mechanical practice, and not paying attention to the dialogic relationship, and failing to recognize the world and the experience and the culture of the people involved. And finally, the one that I find amazing really is the use of Freire's generative word approach of constructing words as words for handwriting, for practicing the directionality of how we should write. So whatever happened to that great task, the great task of transforming reality, humanistic, and historical task of the oppressed to liberate themselves and their oppressors. We have to keep this totally in mind. And I think that could just conclude, yes, what I want to say. Thank you.
That was really great, Linda. Thank you so much. And now we are gonna give the floor to share some examples from the UK and Latin America. I have to have a look of the participants because we have a lot of just making sure. I know two of them, they are here, but no. Okay, I think that well, I would like to say that that these successful educational actions and the dialogic gatherings have arrived to more than 9,000 schools in very diverse contexts in 14 countries at the moment. And we are gonna hear from some of them here in the UK. Thanks to Linda, and I would like to make the point to be really grateful for bringing it to England and be brave to test this action here in the UK. And after the TIPE project that she was explaining, they came to European projects that they were spreading these successful educational actions, and particularly dialogic gatherings in more than 16 schools and more than 160 teachers trained with the partnership of the Cambridgeshire Race and Equality and Diversity Service and the Cambridgeshire School Improvement Board. So in in that tone, we have, for example, the Cottenham Primary School, that I don't think that Helen is in the participants. If you are there, Helen, unmute yourself and you can share your slide. But I think that she's not there, and I have we have 2 more schools participants that I'm sure that they are with us. But I want to say that in Cottenham Primary School, they were implementing these successful educational actions, achieving good results in the reading skills, but also as you can read there from the testimony of the teachers, saying that low achieving children are exposed to texts that will never normally read, and they are discussing them and giving their opinions and thoughts in a way that they never would have before. And also another quote that I think that is significant, because sometimes when we talk about dialogic gatherings and all schools do some kind of reading in with their children, they say, oh yeah, we do that, we already do that. And when we see this practice, is not always the same. And here in Cottenham, they say, until I saw this action, I didn't really understand how different it was to a whole class guided reading, and amazed by the children engagement levels and eagerness to contribute in the discussion. But I'm gonna give the floor now to Juliana Mandra, that I know that is with us, and she will share.
Hi, Linda and Maria. So I'm here on behalf of my colleagues who did Dialogic Gatherings to share our experience at Fulbourn Primary School. Thank you. I wanted to start with my favorite moment of doing DLG. So our school adopted the whole Step for CIS project, which also involved doing Erasmus activities, educational exchange with 3 other European countries, which we did that for 3 years. And the last year we had to do it virtually. And I was the coordinator of the project. And both times I had to do DLGs for 1 day. And that's my favorite bit there. So I put a picture of us doing virtual DLGs. I think seeing children for all 4 countries doing DLGs around one text was just amazing. We got the most positive comments in our evaluation survey for the DLGs, but that was just incredible to see them with their different cultural backgrounds, making different meanings and learning from one another, but sharing one text. It was just an amazing experience. And then I wanted to share with you some of the comments that my colleagues have made. We still do DLGs in our school. So we started about 4 years ago, and we still continue. There was a bit disruption with the lockdown and virtual learning online, but I think we're back and running now. So what my colleagues said is that it is a great opportunity for child-led learning through discussion, that the children really take ownership of the text and they express their views. It does support children comprehension skills, what they understand from a text, finding evidence, making inference and explaining points, rather than just reading a book or a piece of text and then just forgetting about it. They really make deeper meaning of the text because of the DLGs and the discussion that it involves with their peers. Another teacher who still, she is doing the DLGs currently with her children. She is newly trained teacher. She says that it enables children who find decoding onerous to comment on and become involved in the discussion of a high quality text. What decoding means in English is that if children can actually read a word, there's some children have poor reading skills, but because of the DLGs, that in itself improves their reading skills because it is a shared experience rather than an individual experience for those children who do struggle with reading. And I think there's one more. Another teacher said that children are exposed to classic texts that they would normally be their first book of choice, because children get to choose what books they read, and normally they will go for more contemporary readings or readings that are there in the media, whereas the DLGs will expose them, will sort of close that gap between children who are exposed to classic texts through their parents and the cultural capital. That really helps the children to be exposed to a variety of reading books. Another teacher said that it does support the development of cultural and historical understanding. Some texts covered are particularly thought-provoking, and they prompt lots of questions from the children, like, for example, the Canterbury Tales. And when I did the DLGs as part of our Erasmus, we read 2 books that were in the past, and it was really interesting because there were concepts, historical concepts there that really helped the children to travel back in time and imagine the culture and the historical context there. And finally, the comment from our assistant head, who was one of the first people who was trained in DLGs, is that it allows all children to participate on a more even playing field. Children with weaker decoding skills have the opportunity to shine, as they often shared really deep ideas and thoughts having listened to the text beforehand.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Thank you so much for your contribution. And we can expand a little bit more in the debate if participants want to ask you questions. Bear with us. And finally, I'm gonna give the floor to Farah Ahmed, that I know that is with us today, and share her experience with the DLGs. When we talk about DLGs, it's because it's Dialogic Literary Gathering. We talk about DGs in general. Thank you, Farah, for sharing.
So hi, everybody. I'm afraid I don't have any slides or anything, but I wanted to just sort of share our experience with you. I'm involved with 2 small independent alternative Islamic primary schools in the UK. And Maria and Linda have been great in coming in and training our teachers to use the Dialogic Literary Gatherings. So they're working with classical texts. And our teachers have been doing that for some time now. I have to say it's actually not an easy thing to do in some ways, because it really goes against what teachers are used to doing. So when we have changeover in teachers, it's not that easy to maintain. Having said that, when it's happening and it's happening well, it's amazing. And all the comments that have been said so far, I would like to second that. I just want to sort of add a few points that I thought you might be interested in. One is that there was a comment earlier, I think Christine Howe asked about the difference between this and philosophy for children. And I would say that there's quite a big difference. And the difference is more to do with, I think that it's an ethos-ish difference that you can see. Whereas philosophy for children is very much about reasoning and argumentation. The DLGs allow for a richer, more reflective dialogue to develop. And so you see that in a range of ways. And this ties back down to the Freirean notions of knowledge into action. And that notion of knowledge and action, and the way that those 2 things are intertwined, chimes hugely with the Islamic ideas about ilm and amal, knowledge and action, where that knowledge, it doesn't even exist if it's not enacted. So that's something that we've seen, like a parallel between the Freirean notions and our own sort of ethos as a school. And then the second aspect of the idea of love as being part of that educational process. Again, there's from an Islamic tradition, there is a huge tradition of a relationship of love and care being developed between teacher and learner, and the teacher and learner relationship being a very close relationship, more of a parenting kind of relationship. And there's a dimension of emotions there, which is again a bit different to philosophy for children. So those are the kind of comments that I wanted to sort of point out. And then the final thing I wanted to say was that when we had to go online during the lockdown, I was actually really worried that all our sort of like dialogic or interactive approaches would kind of fizzle out. And in some ways, I would say they did, but in other ways, one of the things that was quite strengthened in terms of the DLGs, the Dialogic Literary Gatherings, we actually managed to get parents involved, which we've been trying to do for some time. But parents, because they happen to be there supervising the children or trying to work while the children are having a lesson, they became involved with this, and they actually were really inspired by it as well. So it really is a mechanism for involving the school with the wider community. And whether you do that online or whether you are able to do that in person, these are really amazing things that as a school, there's a different sense of purpose in terms of how the children are engaging with not just the text, but with learning, and how the community and the parents are engaging with text and learning. So that's all I've got to say. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to sort of answer those.
Thank you so much, Farah. Thank you indeed for your contribution. And just a couple of slides more before to open to everyone for the discussion. Just for you to understand the situation of the dialogic gatherings in Latin America. They are big numbers, as Latin America is, and with the support there of governments, universities, trainers, organizations, is with us in the audience. Alfonso Rodriguez Toramas, that is co-author with me in that, the author of the paper in Cambridge Journal of Education, and he coordinates this network of schools in Latin America. So feel free to direct your questions in the debate as well to him. He will be able to explain us more about the dialogic gatherings in Latin America, and sharing some political impact that explains also some of those big numbers in different moments. And we wanted just to do on a slide. There is more governments, but we didn't want to put in ones, but different local, national, and regional governments, they were promoting these successful educational actions, and in particular the dialogic gathering. For example, in Argentina, you have 3 ministries, Salta, Santa Fe, and Mendoza, training schools, sharing books, doing online training. At one point in time, Peru, in his literary hour, that it was mandatory for all the schools, they were advising people, the schools, to do dialogic gathering. Municipalities like Tremembé in Brazil are implementing this dialogic gathering in all their schools, and other countries like Colombia and Mexico that also Alfonso can share if he wants, with the ministries, with the states of Aguascalientes or Mexico City. And I think that we are, the important thing as well is that this governmental support is great, and it promotes the practice in more and more, but the important thing is that there is a practice that is really well rooted in the school, and is a movement that is more bottom up than top down. And as I show, we did the first Latin American encounter of dialogic gatherings in last September, and as you can see, we were discussing and debating more than 1,600 people. So we are gonna leave it here. You have all that webpage where you can understand a little bit more about these actions, and especially in the dialogic gatherings. And you can feel free also to write to us. We are now a little bit, we overrun in this first part, we know, but we are gonna stop sharing and invite you to share your thoughts and feelings. We have now a time to listen, to debate, to talk, and we encourage you to raise your hand and just open the mic. We will give the floor to you. And also I will ask Anna, because we didn't went through the questions in the chat, so I will ask Anna to help us to put forward any questions if they were in that stream in the chat. So happy to start the discussion with you now.
Roy has his hand raised.
I'm not sure my video is working, so you're going to have to get just my audio. In the Pedagogy of Oppressed, Freirean talks about the importance of love, and it's been mentioned a couple of times this afternoon. And certainly in the UK, we have quite a reserved attitude towards this, and can send a bit of an upset to most people. However, the emerging science, certainly over the past 15 years, the neuroscience and the psychology knows that the state of love is the optimum state for learning. And I would be interested on hearing Linda and Maria's observations of the conditions and how you create the conditions for love that is a healthy approach to engaging with teachers who feel that their job is to provide information rather than the point that Farah made, which I thought was an excellent point, is to become the loving parent of the child, especially, to my final point, with the obsession that we have in the UK around excessive child protection issues where we can't show affection to. And the reason I ask this, I work with very angry young men in their later years, and I make it an absolute policy to tell them that I love them. And I think this is something that I'd be interested in your thoughts and feelings.
Thank you so much, Roy. I will start, and then
I think you
Linda,
should begin.
We can join. It's a great question, and thank you for sharing. And love is a center of not only the Dialogic Gathering, but also the conception of the schools and learning communities. But we think that the Dialogic Gatherings promote not only the recognition of the emotions, that is something that is working all the schools about identify and show emotions, but especially they encourage, they give the context to develop feelings. And we talk, especially in Dialogic Gatherings, about the feeling of friendship and love, and to create these conditions where there is a safe space where children can explain their experiences, their point of view. They can build in each other's thoughts, agreeing and disagreeing. It creates these strong, meaningful relationships between the whole class group and with the class, with the teacher. And I agree with you, Roy, in this obsession with the transmission, but I will say that we don't have to choose, that in the Dialogic Gathering, they are learning a lot, reading comprehension, and a lot of vocabulary, skill, grammar, and but also are learning values and learning emotion, and especially feelings. The feeling of solidarity and friendship is something that is highly promoted. And Linda can share, maybe in her research, it was a video where one of the children, you remember, in West Elrond, that they were talking about how the Dialogic Gatherings promote friendship. So yeah, that's I'm giving you the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll reiterate what Maria has already said, and I think the part of love clearly is trust, and I mean, I don't quite know how they do it, but I think because the teachers do amazingly manage to withdraw from the center of what's happening in the Dialogic Gathering. I confess I've only observed literary gatherings, but and both here and in Spain. But there is an enormous confidence and trust built amongst the children, and in fact, it's not down to the teacher. The children respond to each other, which is one of the amazing things. And I can think of one example, actually, in a primary school where one of the children had lost his mum. His mum had died. The teacher said she didn't really know how to talk to this child, she didn't know what to say. And the child brought the issue up through one of the texts they were reading. And in fact, the other children spoke to this child and they ended up talking about the ways in which different families who had experienced bereavement dealt with it, which I think, again, so much of this is a great discovery on the part of the teacher, who's normally in a moderating role in DLGs. So I could think of many others, but.
Thank you. I think that the whole creating the conditions for dialogue, I mean, in the UK, we use the term unconditional positive regard, which I think is a very sanitized way of just saying love. But thank you. That's lovely. Thank you, Libby. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Roy. Mayra.
Hello, good afternoon for you. And we're still in the beginning of the afternoon here in Brazil, from where I'm speaking. I'm Mayra, I'm a professor here in Brazil, and I was really impressed by your presentation, especially involving children's behaviors and activities and attitudes towards literacy and dialogue, especially. But I have this anxiety, I think, that's about the times we're living in are really intolerant times, right? We're experiencing lots of hatred being reinforced through all kinds of politics and societal organizations, and school is not apart from that. And considering this context, I understand that children might also reproduce intolerant behaviors that they are exposed to, and in different institutions, from family to school to media to people they live with. So here in Brazil, we have this legislation that is worried about multicultural education, specifically concerning Black and Indigenous populations. So it's a law that establishes that schools should teach about the importance of African and Indigenous culture. And that is usually, it's a law, but sometimes it's not considered in teachers' planning, in schools, daily life. So my question is about how to deal with multicultural children's backgrounds when we have intolerance being fostered in so many different societal institutions. How to deal in a dialogue that might fall into Popper's paradox, that you can't be fully tolerant with intolerance. How to deal with such things, especially in times of racial hatred. If you had any experience dealing with it in your research experience and in your daily teaching lives. So thank you for the opportunity to have this dialogue.
Thank you, Mayra. Thank you for your question. Do you wanna go first?
I can say that I think this issue comes up probably quite frequently, partly because of the classic texts that the children are reading, that they're engaging with issues of diversity or hatred and violence sometimes but in a different time. And so the things that they might choose or that they select from the text in a literary gathering can pinpoint those things, and the child can then elaborate on what they think about that and why they've chosen that and their own experiences. In a school actually just outside Barcelona, I was observing a literary gathering, and I would say, I can't remember precisely the amount of time, but over a period of some 20-25 minutes, the children themselves held the floor discussing aspects of racial discrimination and racism, presenting examples, talking about their opinions. I was, again, absolutely amazed what was happening, and there isn't a requirement that they must come to a single opinion. So the kind of the uncertainty and the different perspectives may remain, but they're there for further discussion. The children comment on each other's. It's very common to hear them say, well, I agree with X because, but I disagree with her because of something else. And something that's very unusual in classrooms, in my experience, is the children are thinking as they speak. And we have examples where they change their opinion in the course of the gathering, or even in the course of talking about it. So the important thing is that, in a sense, the Freirean sense, they're naming their reality and reflecting on it and talking about it. I could say many more, but I'm sure Maria has more examples or comments.
I think that that's so brilliant, and I think that I will add that in the DLGs, what is prevailing is the egalitarian dialogue that Linda was talking about. So here they have to learn how to argue, to put forward your positions based on validity claims and not empowered claims. So just to learn egalitarian dialogue in the context of dialogic gatherings is something that is going to help to those really confronted, as you describe, positions in society, because during that hour we learn that we discuss based on our arguments and not because I'm saying so, or because they are not allowed positions where you don't develop your argument, and we have to compare your argument with my argument and other people joining that. So just that learning is amazing for the future. So thank you, Maida. And Paula.
Hi, hello. I'm Paula. I'm speaking from Brazil as well as Maida is. Hi, Maida. Thank you so much for your question and also for your illuminating answers. I was just trying to put together something that Dr. Neil Mercer brings to dialogic learning when he talks about the importance of setting out protocols for dialogue. So thinking about small children, and I think the 3 schools that you mentioned or you brought in were from primary school, and putting together the question that Maria just brought in, how would be, because I think you mentioned, Maria, that the children are not allowed to bring up thoughts that are not based on arguments, right? They're not just allowed to say something that is not together with the because after, right? So, and I think this is also, or it just, I felt it was just like a top down, that you're not allowed to do that. How would be constructing or building protocols for a dialogue time? I don't know exactly how it works with them, together with the children, So they have like they set up an agreement between themselves. How do you see this working with small children? Does it work? Does it not? You understand my question? It's not a question, it's kind of a question and a comment in bringing in protocols for a dialogue, constructing by the children, of course, the teacher moderating it, but something that will be meaningful for their context. Thank you.
Sure, yes, you can correct me if or add to what I want to say. You talk about setting up a protocol. It's very much a part of the initial gathering, is that some ground rules, as we would call them, are agreed amongst the group. And of course, that also means everybody has the opportunity to contribute to this ground rules. And I suppose one thing I want to say is that I've heard from teachers of how, having done this in a dialogic gathering, it will transfer to their teaching in other curriculum areas. So, which seems to me it's inevitable, it has to happen. If you start to work in one way that's productive and the children are very positive about it, then you're going to move it to other areas. So teachers have said how they will take some of this procedure to other curriculum areas. So I think they set up the ground rules. I think something that relates to Roy's question earlier as well is, I don't know whether this is a common ground rule, but I know of one school where the children, they don't take outside the gathering the things that have been disclosed in it. And I suppose that might be fairly common. So that if children do self-disclose, as often happens, it stays within the gathering. It becomes a kind of sacred space in that respect. And I guess also the point you're saying, well, not allowed, that sounds a bit draconian to me. I suspect children themselves will comment on each other's comments, which is an enormous strength of this. They are astonishing, in my experience anyhow. So not allowed is more, it's not so much not allowed as, well, we need to think about that together, I think would be the approach to take. I think for a lot of people, certainly me, it's not a familiar way of working. I wasn't brought up that way.
No, I just want to add that not allowing is just little by little, session by session, we are building up this consensus of how we have to argument every single point that we want to put for discussion. So if there is and it's not the teachers, sometimes are the same, the participants. When someone says, because I think that's also because I am older than you, or I'm more intelligent than you, and then the rest of the children, or sometimes the teacher often is the moderator, but sometimes are children the moderator, but the moderator have to make sure that egalitarian dialogue is in place. So the claim that because I'm older or because I'm smarter than you is not a validity claim, it's a power claim. I want you to change your mind from my position of power. So little by little is not the allow or no allow, it is the agreement of the group that we are going every time that we develop an argument, develop a position, we have to argument and we will compare our argumentation, basically. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I don't know if there is more questions. We are a little bit over time. We might move on for the second part of the session, but Anna, I will ask you to help us with the questions in the chat.
Yes, I mean, there are a few more questions in the chat. I will share with you the chat afterwards because there's a lot of conversation going on there, points of view and expanding it. So there's a dialogic conversation happening in the chat, which is very, very interesting. But there are also some questions. Well, one of them is the notion, so Natalia Martins says, there is something I noticed from working in a school in the Cambridgeshire. One thing that I noticed working in a school in Cambridgeshire is that there is little opportunity for an action. Is the notion of time in need of expansion, is that too unrealistic? What are the priorities?
Yes, no, I'm not sure either. There's not enough time for action.
No. There's not opportunity for enaction.
Enaction, okay.
What is your experience?
And I dare say that there's another teacher from this area or in England who could probably answer that better than I can. I think that,
I could, Linda.
How about you, Juliana? I fear that our curriculum is so crowded that the children are pinned to their seats for an awful lot of the time. So
yes, so that can happen, especially with reading, that it's such an individual experience. I'm sorry for the vacuum sound in the background. It's just, it's the time after school when schools are being cleaned. So reading can be a very individual experience in schools in England, that children read for pleasure, but they're individually. However, the dialogic gatherings do the opposite. They provide time for enaction of the text. If by enaction is meant that you try to interpret the text, you try to work out a little bit more in depth what is going on, see how other people interpret it. So my understanding of this question was that the curriculum doesn't provide the time for that enaction in reading, but I think that is enabled by the dialogic gatherings. And we do that during guided reading in Key Stage 2. Guided reading would be just before the dialogic gatherings, would be a time when a teacher would hear the children read a book. And now it's become a time when everyone engages in the dialogic gathering. So they go more in depth and they share their understanding, their interpretation. So it's a more social experience. So to me, that is an enactment.
Thank
yes,
you,
absolutely.
Juliana. Thank you. And I couldn't read the chat, but I saw, Christine, that you point out that it's time for reflection, and absolutely we agree on that. And that's why when we read alone, we have some thoughts and ideas. There is some time for reflection and for making my arguments. And then during the dialogic gathering is where we put our reflections in dialogue with other people's reflections, and we build in that knowledge together. So yeah, I'm agreeing with that point as well. Anna, we have more questions, so
no, I think we can move on. The rest of them is more arguments and points of view of the topics that you already discussed.
That's great. Then we would like to invite you to discuss as a dialogic gathering the second letter of Paulo Freire, Teachers as a Cultural Workers. And I imagine that all of you have the text, the idea here, and I would like to say that this is a practice that we also do with teachers, and it's called Dialogic Pedagogical Gathering. Teachers read research articles of best theories in education and discuss it in the way that we are going to do this afternoon with the participation to you all. Just in case someone was not able to read the text, we are gonna give some minutes. I think that we can give 10 minutes and devote the half an hour that we have from 4:30 to 5 to do together this dialogic gathering. So we are gonna make a break, 10 minutes, for getting the text, choose your idea, the paragraph that you wanna share. We will give you the opportunity to raise your hand and read aloud your idea or paragraph and explain the reasons why. And then we open a round of comments on that idea or paragraph, so we all have a feeling of how the dialogic gathering works. So see you at 4:30 o'clock, and we finish the session with this half an hour of practice if you think that is a good idea to join us. Thank you and see you soon.
To read with this on.
So we are going to start this second part of the session, and we would like to encourage you to take part of this dialogic gathering and comment on the parts of this second letter that you would like to comment on. And as we say before in the presentation, the moderator that in this case, I'm gonna act as a moderator and give the floor to the people who raise hands. Doesn't do big introductions, so they just ask to the participants who would like to share an idea or paragraph. So please raise your hand, and we will make a list of some of you who would like to share your ideas, and then we will be giving you the floor. Who is the one who is going to break the
Go
ice?
first.
I think Natalia has a very interesting point in the chat. Natalia, would you like to say that out loud?
I don't know if I would like to say that out loud. No, I think it's a very strong articulation that, how do you say that without using an army vocabulary? When I read these texts, I feel armed in the sense that I feel like I can fight and I shouldn't give up. And this is probably one of the main reasons why the Brazilian far right wants to destroy Freire's image, because it's so easy to read that and be inspired, and that's it. It's very simple. It's just it's more like a, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for your contribution. Normally, when we say the page where our idea is and the paragraph, I appreciate that you share the feeling and the meaning of the whole letter. And if someone wants to comment on that feeling, we can open now the floor for commenting. And if nobody raises hands, yeah, the idea is we raise hands and we say my ideal paragraph is in page 3, paragraph 2. We read aloud, and I choose this idea or paragraph because, and we give our reasons, and then we open the floor for discussions about that particular idea or paragraph. Thank you, Natalia, for opening this dialogic gathering. And I don't know if any other of you find in the text any idea, paragraph that you would like to share with the rest of participants. Okay. No, there is two hands now.
Oh, good.
It's
Well done.
Ian, and Anna. You rose the hand at the same time, so Ian, we can start with you.
Okay, thank you. On page 54, excuse me, at the end of a paragraph, I'll just read it to you. Whatever I know with my entire self, with my critical mind, but also with my feelings, with my intuitions, with my emotions. What I must not do is stop at the level of emotions, of intuitions. I must place the objects of my intuition under serious, rigorous investigation. I must never disregard them. I was struck by that. As soon as I read that, it resonated with the work of someone I know, Louise Rosenblatt, and talks about reader response theory with respect to reading and how reading is a transaction with the text and with the author. And when I went on to read after that segment I've just read out, Freire talks about reading of a text as a transaction, and it really confirmed in my belief this notion of this transactional relationship between reader and text, or reader and author, which again is part of reader response theory. So my response to this was sort of, this resonated with my other beliefs and understandings about how we interact with text.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for your contribution. Who would like to comment on Ian's idea or contribution? Please raise your hand so you put your name on the chat. Anna?
Yeah, I agree with Ian, and it's also related to what I wanted to say. This paragraph, but also some others that some other lines that he wrote just below that, kind of reminded me also of Bakhtin's work when he says that it's this transaction between the reader and the text, but also the voices that are all the voices that come together in the mind of the writer when he was writing this text. And then all the voices that we have as readers of that text that also came together into this dialogue and makes us create new meaning from the text that is that we are reading. So yeah, that was what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Anna. Giselle.
Hello. I was also very interested in that paragraph, and it reminds me also and helped me to create some connections with the work of Jacques Rancière about the emancipated spectator, or in the relations that we can create with either a reading or a play or I don't know, a painting, and the role that we create as emancipated actors in that relation from a critical dialogue, action, and reflection of what we have in front of us with that reading, or any other also. I'm not just thinking in readings, but also other inputs like painting, drama, or other things, images, things that are also related to the works of Freire in relation to the initial works of alphabetization with images, through images, for example.
Thank you so much, Giselle. Thank you for your contribution. We are still in the paragraph that Ian brought for discussion. Natalia?
Yeah, it makes me think as well of a text from, I think, André Lepecki, in which they're discussing the idea of the role of a dramaturg in a rehearsal space, and as a position of not knowing, but not knowing as a rigorous method. And this also consonnates, I think, resonates with what Giselle is saying. There is another text by Bojana Sevcik. I can then put the link on the chat, which is about the drama. Well, that might not, it's not the proper place, but I like the idea of not knowing as a rigorous methodology, being a space of sharing and collective space of construction of knowledge, in which you can position yourself in that position of not knowing, but with certain consistency and intuitions, feelings, emotions not always give you that. So just to bring that balance.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for your contribution. Any other comments in this particular paragraph? Then we can open the floor to the discussion of a new paragraph if someone likes to share their ideas. Anna, did you want to share your paragraph, or because you raised the hands before we began?
Yeah, well, the paragraph that I wanted to share was to say the idea that I made. Yeah, but
somebody had one at the same time as Ian.
Yeah, it was Anna.
That was Anna, right.
They were connected in the ideas that, in the arguments that they want to share. Someone else would like to share ideas or paragraphs? Yeah, Alfonso.
Good afternoon. I would like to share a paragraph that is in page 55. This is my first time reading Paulo Freire in English. But I would like to share this idea that is in the last paragraph of the page that says, if one's ability to respond is less than needed to meet a given challenge, one must not allow oneself to be immobilized by the fear of not understanding, or by defining the task as impossible to realize, to simply abandon it. If my ability to respond to a text is less than needed to comprehend the text, I must seek the help of someone, not just a teacher who assigned the reading, in overcoming at least some of the limitations that make the task more difficult. I wanted to point or to share this paragraph because it made me think of the schools that we're working with in Mexico that are putting in practice those successful actions, those dialogic gatherings that you spoke about before. At the beginning, before sometimes when we talk with teachers about these successful actions and how they have been implemented in other schools and how they are evidence-based, some of the teachers, the first reaction they have is to feel fear of perhaps having something too difficult to work with, because we speak of scientific evidence, of scientific articles, and we talk to them that they are based on Paulo Freire's work or in scientific research, and sometimes the first idea is to feel that it might be too difficult for me to understand it and to put it in practice. But what Paulo Freire is sharing with us here is that that fear can be overcome by sharing those difficult or those readings with others, perhaps with other colleagues of us, educators in our schools. And that's what some of the schools that we work with are doing. They are doing this kind of gatherings like the one that we're doing today, and they read scientific articles of dialogic gatherings, of interactive groups and other successful actions. They also read actually books by Paulo Freire, by Vygotsky, by other authors, but by doing it together and sharing their thoughts the way we're doing today, they overcome their fear of believing that it is a difficult text, and that makes them feel more confident to put in practice those successful actions. And I think it's very important to remember what Paulo Freire is saying here. If we feel fear of a text of this kind, it is very important to share it with other colleagues in order to overcome that fear. Thank you.
Alfonso, thank you so much. Who would like to comment on this particular idea or paragraph that Alfonso brings to the discussion? I will raise my hand and comment as well, just reinforcing and agreeing with you, Alfonso. Thank you. Because it happened as well with the children. Children with special needs, children with very private backgrounds, when we give them first time, Linda will remember that day when we give them the Odyssey, and it was that girl that she was crying because she didn't want to come to school, thinking that she was unable to read that text. But those are kind of texts that when we read it together, we can access the meaning easily. We reach stages of comprehension that you cannot do alone. And probably when that was how it was. When she read alone the text at home, probably, or the pages agree, 2-3 pages, probably she couldn't access too much meaning, but for sure she found some things that connect with their experience, or they would like to share something, and she brought it to that gathering and shared it. And when she realized that thing that she was sharing, it was important and people were commenting, she wanted to keep reading and go deeper for the next time. And also by comment different paragraphs and adding different opinions, she was able to understand the chapter, the pages that we were discussing in that session. So agreeing with overcoming the fear, sharing that reading with other people. So, yeah.
I remember at the end when she read towards the end of the Odyssey, she was crying again because she didn't want to get to the end of the book.
That's true. Who would like, we have 10 minutes more. We are not gonna, we have 10 minutes more if someone else would like to share idea or paragraph. And if no, we can have these 10 minutes to questions about the dynamic, about the practice. You, for example, today as a moderator, I was not a great moderator because I was agreeing a lot with and nodding with my head a lot with what you were saying. So normally the moderator and the teacher has to be quite neutral, just saying thank you for your contribution and giving the floor to the next person to speak. And I don't know if I mean, I think that in this time we were able to understand that is yeah, some ideas, paragraphs, and round of discussion. I don't know if any one of you have, if you don't want to share your contribution about the second letter, have any other questions about the dynamic, about how to do it, about how to do with those children that don't speak, I don't know, any other comments are welcome. Yeah, Anna?
Yes, I wonder if the dynamic is kind of similar to what we are experiencing today. Like maybe at the beginning, people are feeling a little bit hesitant to share a contribution or something, but then maybe session by session, children become more motivated or less afraid or less insecure to say something. Is this usually the case?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the question because it's really important. Yes, as in the dialogic gathering, there is no right or wrong answer. Little by little, the children are gaining that confidence, but they have to understand how it works first. Because, for example, I'm sure that Natalia was thinking, oh, I didn't say the page, but she was brave because she started the discussion, and now she understands that we have to do first the paragraph and the page, and then explain the reasons, and that's why little by little, they understand the dynamic and of course are participating more and engaging more. Al.
Yes. Hello. I don't know if you can see me. Forgive me if you can. So look, I guess the thing that keeps shouting out to me, because I now work for the government, used to be a head teacher for quite some time, and every now and then I pick up the trickles from English colleagues about potential limitations within the curriculum and all of the accountability that might squash something like this out of what we do. And I just want to shout out against that, because having done DLG, we did it for a number of years, didn't we, with you, Maria? And it just developed and developed and developed. And it was something about having the courage as leaders and teachers to recognize something worthy on a human level, knowing that we would be able to make it work within the curriculum. Because the curriculum's not what's important, it's the humanity that we're trying to build, isn't it? You know what I mean? And it's so easy for us to default to the state as the center of focus, who creates this curriculum, certainly in England and Wales and all these sorts of things. And that's not what it's about. I knew I'd got it right with the DLG in a school with, at that time, 32 different languages, kids from all over the world, able to come together as human beings, speak from their diversity, but come together as human beings. And it was always a joy as head to cover these lessons when the teacher had to go off and do something, because I knew I didn't have to do anything, because I knew that the dynamic had changed from the state-led curriculum, mastery curriculum, and teachers telling them, and then they modeled it and all of that, into something that actually was much more powerful in developing these young human beings, which contributed towards their success within the curriculum. So sorry, that's an awful lot of waffle, but it's just trying to encourage people, grab it. It's an absolutely stunning opportunity for any kid or school, if you're interested in raising human beings.
Thank you so much. Thank you indeed for your contribution and for sharing your experience, and amazing the contribution of the children of our school as well. When I think that we brought some of the children in that school in the video, but we have amazing testimonies as well about how they develop. Any other questions, comments? Linda.
Thank you. I just want to build on what Al was saying, in that one of the sections I had chosen was on page 57. Children learn early on that their imagination does not work. Using their imagination is almost forbidden, a kind of sin. In addition, their cognitive abilities are challenged in a distorted manner. They're invited neither to imaginatively relive the story told in the book, nor to gradually appropriate the significance of the text. And for me, that and several other places really, even this is written about children in Brazil and other places, but I've heard this so many times from teachers here in England, from colleagues and teachers taking part in the Cambridge Primary Review, in particular Michael Armstrong talking about this. So I just, it just fits so well with one of the pieces I've chosen. And at the same time, a resourceful teacher will be able to manipulate the curriculum so that they can easily find time for dialogue. It's just a matter of, again, not being afraid to do it, in my opinion.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Any other comments? If no, I think that we are close to the end. And trying to read the chat as well. I think that we can close here, if no, saying how a joy it was to share this afternoon with you, where we all learn from your thoughts and your contributions. And again, we are here, our emails, I will put it again in the chat, our emails, so you can have it and contact us if you want to know more, if you want more bibliography. We have a lot. Oh, sorry, I only share it with one participant. Now I'm sharing it with you all the emails. And thanks again, CLAREC, congratulations for this amazing celebration of Freirean legacy. And I will leave Linda to close the event.
Thank you very much. Thank you all again, especially, well, those of you who are still with us, who are taking part in this, and for reading the second letter. We hope you'll be able to take something away and enact it maybe, or feel reassured in the things that you were already doing, which I'm sure as dialogic as can be. So with that, I think we should say cheerio, and please do get in touch with more questions. We weren't able to read all of the chat, but we did have a look through it and hope we dealt with most people's concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I just have to say thank you very much to our speakers for a fantastic session on Dialogic Literary Gatherings and for explaining to us the enormous influence that Freire's theory of dialogic action has on it. And also thank you to our attendees for your thoughtful questions and comments. We hope you enjoyed the seminar as much as we did. And the recording of the session will be made available in our social media and YouTube channels. We will keep you posted in case you want to come back to the information that was shared today. And do not forget to follow CLAREC's social media to keep informed about these and future events. And yes, this was all for today's seminar. Thank you very much to everyone. And we hope to see you again in the rest of the events of the Freire celebration. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.